All right, do I have a treat for you today? These are wines that are grown and made in Nevada. So this guy emails us and he wants to add his winery into Global Wine Database. You can too, by the way. He's in Reno, Nevada, and he's like, hey, I want to send samples to Madeline to see if she'll taste them on video. And we're like, sure, yeah, tell us where your wines are grown. We're assuming he like buys grapes in California or something and then makes them in a winery in Reno, Nevada. Turns out the wines in this box should be grapes that were grown in Reno, Nevada. Do you know how insane that is? The climate in Reno, Nevada, not only is it dry and desert-like in the summer, in the wintertime, it's brutally cold. Tech sheets, and then what do we got here? St. Croix. This is a red wine. St. Croix is a French-American hybrid. Interesting label. It looks like a shape of Nevada with like a bunch of bugs, maggots. An army of caterpillars marching northward out of Mexico. Late 19th century surveyors describing the resemblance of the north-south mountain ranges of Basin and Range. This is Basin and Range Cellars, so all right, I'm gonna call them caterpillars because that's what they think they are. Next wines, whoa. For you wine geeks, this is a Pet Nat. Pétillant Natural, that's a sparkling wine. It's made into wine and then bottled real quick with a crown cap like you see here. And when they store it again, it continues to ferment in the bottle and that's where they get the bubbles. Then we got Lacrosse and looks like a late harvest BRIANNA. So here we have 4 wines grown and made into wine in Nevada. So when I say the climate is brutal in Reno, Nevada, I want to give you some stats so you can like wrap your brain around it. Growing degree days. We talk a lot about this as wine geeks. How many days do we have to grow grapes that are above freezing and that are not over 90 degrees? Because when grapes get over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, they stop growing. They're like, oh my God, it's too hot. Kind of like how people think that it gets too hot over 90. Grapes are the same way. So in Napa, for comparison's sake, we have 250 days, actually it's more than 300 days a year, that are like in the zone, in the growing degree zone. And of those days that grape varieties grow, because they start going around February and then you definitely harvest them by October, you get about 12 hours a day dedicated to growing grapes. So these grapes have like all the time in the world and all the degrees they need to ripen and grow proper. Reno, on the other hand, get this, 166 days. So it's a super short growing season. It's majorly truncated because on the early side of the year, it's frozen and cold. On top of that, it's blistering hot in the summertime in Reno, Nevada as well. So how do you grow grapes in this super truncated, super hot season? They get 15, almost 16 hours a day of just like solid baking sun ripening these grapes. Whoever's making them and dedicating themselves to growing grape varieties in Nevada is, like I said, they're totally insane. And I like crazy. I think I'm gonna steal some from this Lacrosse because the white wines definitely seem to be the focus here. He sent me 3 whites and only 1 red. So let's give it a taste. One thing that's of note, and you can see this too, is the color. This is definitely a golden colored wine, so we're assuming there's some oxidation maybe in the winemaking process or just difficulty with the grape varieties, or maybe they have skins that are slightly colored. Maybe they get pinkish. This almost looks pinkish when I look in it. So maybe the skins of the grapes are a little pinkish. Let's give it a sniff. Super lemony. It's like lemons, saline, lemons, salt water, a little bit of celery, but like, it's like almost like savory or thyme. What I'm describing to you does not sound that bad to me. It actually sounds pretty good. Let's give it a taste. This wine is dry. I feel a super big explosion of acidity on the palate, which I was very worried about because hot, hot, hot. I'm worried that like these grapes are getting super baked, but I'm just feeling acidity across my palate. In terms of the quality of the taste, I get this sort of green, celery, salty note, and then it finishes kind of the same. So not a whole lot of interest there in terms of development in the taste, but not bad. Like this kind of reminds me of like Grillo or something from like that from Sicily. So definitely citrus fruit flavors like coming through, and maybe a little bit more into that grapefruit. Like if you can imagine a little bit of grapefruit pith, that kind of like bitterness you get with grapefruit. This would go really well with like some fried oysters or something like that. Not bad, actually. Nevada? Come on. This is Nevada wine. I was not expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, quite honestly. What do they got? Gambling and legalized prostitution. Now I'm very, very interested to see how a red wine tastes from Nevada. A little bit about French-American hybrids. You know, when we came to America, in the early days, we came in through the East Coast and through New York. And a lot of our agricultural center was in upstate New York, which has, if you've ever lived there, brutally cold winters. And sure enough, grape varieties wouldn't survive the winters in New York so much. Of course, now we're kind of figuring it out. So botanists started developing grape varieties to survive these cold winters, and they would take a little bit of a Vitis vinifera species and they'd combine it, or they breed it with an American species of grape, and they would make these sort of magical new varieties. And over the years, we sort of picked out a few grape varieties where we were like, you know what, these make pretty good wines. And you'll find them in like New England, in the Midwest of the United States, and they make really interesting, delicious wines, usually with heightened acidity. Whoa. Okay, so this to me smells almost like a Loire Valley Cab Franc. It's got, I hate to talk about wine and describe it by other wines, but for those who know a Loire Valley Cab Franc, it's super herbaceous. It smells kind of like freshly wetted concrete, a little bit of green peppercorn, maybe bell pepper, and then these like berry notes, like super fruity berry notes, like fresh sweet raspberries, a little bit of strawberry. I know that sounds weird. It smells like a fresh summer rain. All right, let's give it a taste. That's like my acidity face. Wow, acidity, like I kind of expected. But it actually has a little bit of tannin that comes in, like all of a sudden, and then it kind of drops out. It's a little chalky, like fine chalk, not super aggressive on the mid palate. I feel it more in the front of my palate, so I almost wonder if these are grape tannins and not oak tannins. Super green, but then we've got those berry flavors, sort of like forest red berries and that kind of a thing. This wine also looks to have some sort of oxidation to it. It has, maybe there's some winemaking difficulties they're having working with these grape varieties in Nevada. I really don't know. Maybe it's a growing thing. But you see a little bit of this orangey fleck on the rim, which makes me think there was either oxygen during the winemaking, or maybe the grapes came in, oxidized a little bit, which caused the color to shift. Overall, the color is very rich. It's very, very dark colored wine. I don't know if this is a St. Croix varietal thing, or if he's adding something to make it have that deep color, but it looks really, really cool. For Nevada wine, I gotta hand it to Basin and Range for making wines that are kind of serious. That's what I got for you today. Pretty exciting unboxing. So definitely leave a comment below on what you want to hear about next. This is Madeline. Peace out.